following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the QATV staff or board of directors. QATV, in compliance with FCC regulations, is prohibited from exercising control over the content of independent, member-produced public access programming.
Hi there, thank you for joining us once again. Soph and me wanted to bring you some knowledge on urban education. So we have a special guest, Janet Ferrone, who has been with the Boston Public School for the last 30 years and who can really shed some light on urban education. This is something very important to all of us, and I would also like to know, what is urban education? Janet, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. As you mentioned, I've been with the Boston Public Schools for 30 years and primarily working with students with disabilities. But having lived in the suburbs and work in Boston, I just noticed so many differences between the two. You're in a suburb, you have a neighborhood school. Your child goes to elementary school or perhaps maybe a parochial or independent school. But in Boston, we have 123 schools. The parents have a process where they must pick the first choice, the second choice, the third choice, the fourth, and the fifth choice. And it could be in a neighborhood across town with desegregation, where the schools many years ago with Judge Garrity were too segregated racially. We have that constriction where we can't have an off-balance school, so there may be slots for one ethnic group, but not for another. We've had cases with siblings. The parent has 3 children, one at this school, one over here, one. So it has a very different feel. I think with, for many years, you felt that there was a community. You'd sent your child down the street. The neighbors saw your child walking to the school. Their friends lived in that neighborhood. It's a very, very different experience in the schools. And in terms of being within the city, Boston is a high poverty area, particularly the students in the schools. Many of the upper income families may have elected to pay for outside schooling, but we have a high density population, a high poverty population, immigrant population, a lot of non-English speaking families, which adds to a lot of the factors. We have children coming in who have flown in the day before from the Dominican Republic. They're only speaking Spanish. We have multiple languages in the school, and there's a requirement to provide naturally instruction, not necessarily in the child's language, but they call it sheltered English immersion, to introduce vocabulary and language to those students. We also have a very transient population. There's not a lot of home ownership. People are renting. People are in subsidized housing. People move, their addresses, phone numbers. Just a very different experience than a lot of more stable suburban communities. So the students are coming in with a lot of things against them that we need to really work with them to stabilize and fill in the gaps. Another major issue we deal with is violence. I was looking at the statistics, and when they surveyed high school students, have you known someone murdered, beaten, stabbed, or shot? It was like 86% said yes.
Oh my God.
The witness, there is a whole program called Witness to Violence that comes in and provides services, but Most of my students can tell you their brother was killed, their father was killed, their cousin, friend, just constantly, if you see in the papers. And the thing that's always hard is that if there's a suburban shooting or incident, front page, everything, and then if you turn to page 8, there's a minority student, you know, in little print, a child that, you know, has had some sort of incident. It's just not given the equal weight. So there's just so much that the students are walking into, bringing with them and coming to in the school. There's the achievement gap, where we look at the scores of the white students, the students of color, and the white students are outperforming. And then, since we're on the Voices of South Asia, then I'm sure you're very familiar with the model minority,
Yes.
where the Asian students are expected to overachieve, expected to get the perfect SAT scores,
Yes.
Ivy League schools. And that's really what we're seeing, even though we don't have a large Asian population in Boston. What we're seeing is, number one, it is sort of a myth, because there's certain groups, Asian Indians, Japanese, certain groups that really are meeting those targets. But there's other groups, Cambodians, Laotians, that are not graduating in the numbers, that are not. And there's kind of a culture of, well, I'm expected to do this, so let me keep my mouth shut because I'm not meeting this. So there is, even for a group that's supposed to be the highest achiever, it's almost a disservice, because there are not services for the students. They don't need those services. I was looking at some statistics. The highest rate of suicide in colleges is Asian women.
Oh my God.
There was a note, one young woman left saying, I just can't measure up. That's all the note said. And I know you've seen, you know, in the papers, different colleges, MIT. So each group comes with a different area that impacts them. But the schools have, and I know a lot of times the public schools get a bad name, but I feel like there's very, very good programming, very good people in the schools. People have said to me, oh, you have all this experience, you can go work in the suburbs, in some fancy suburb. And that's my passion, is urban education and working with students that have the need. I feel really useful. I feel like I'm needed there, I'm not interchangeable. I have the expertise, and I can work with these students and give them some stability. But there's so many issues. Again, with the violence, a lot of students who have either been abused, who have witnessed violence, they're coming in with physical complaints, a lot of somatization of, the stomach aches, the different things that are coming out that they can't speak of, but it's coming out in their bodies. The rates of asthma in the communities where I work, in Roxbury, Dorchester, a friend of mine did a doctoral dissertation on that, and with the mouse droppings and the different chemicals and the dumping in the empty lots, the levels for asthma are off the charts. It's really an epidemic in that community. It's also exacerbated by emotional distress. So I have frequently students, last week a student hospitalized for asthma, often the parent calling, oh, so-and-so won't be in today, another asthma attack, he's in the hospital. We've had things that when I grew up, I didn't have friends that really had asthma attacks. And so that's a lot of the very specific health issues in the city. One of the things that's been very interesting is watching the difference in females and males over the years. We're seeing a lot more females, more acting out behaviors, whereas years ago there was much more of a
Male.
quiet compliance. But a lot of females who have been either abused or witness of violence, the anger seems more socially acceptable now. One of the programs that I recently became aware of, it's not a school program, but it's called Lipstick. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've heard of
Operation
it,
Lipstick.
yes.
Yeah. Ladies involved in stopping, well, the inner city killings. I mean, I have all
Yes.
the letters right. And actually, it's an organization that I'm going to get more involved in. But to explain what it is that when they're looking at crime statistics, where does the gun come from? Where did this, if it's a male committing the crime, where did the gun come from? Oftentimes, it's a girlfriend who's been coerced into holding the gun, holding the drugs, holding the money. And this group is really out there educating females, going into schools, into the community, having workshops about relationships and how not to get drawn into this. Because there are a lot of females in poverty, and with the male saying, well, you do this, and I buy you new boots, or we've had a lot of that. Is also the whole issue of females being and sex trafficking, and again with poverty and lack of resource, it's gradually presented to you. There's the whole operation of how the pimp works, and it's very frightening to see 11, 12-year-old girls heading in that direction. But we do also have programs that focus on that for the middle and high school students.
And this is in the public school system?
Yeah, we bring in agencies outside, but I mean, we do have counseling for students within the school. One of the areas that I primarily work in, along with autism, is depression and anxiety. I was sent to this school after 25 years. I worked with students with behavior problems, acting out, criminally involved students. And all of a sudden, we're seeing increases in students with depression, anxiety, a lot of suicidal hospitalizations. So I was transferred to another school, and they said, you need to go start a program. You have a lot of experience. Go start a program. So for 3 years, I've been working with students with depression, anxiety, and so very different than the acting out students. These are internalizing students, very different profile. It's very interesting that a lot of the students are from the higher socioeconomic groups. The students with the behavior problems was a real high poverty primarily, and also two-parent families. It's very thought-provoking. Why are these students with more resources and a two-parent family experiencing so many struggles? So we've been, I've been working with this program. After the first year, they doubled the size of my program. They opened another program in East Boston High School. They opened one at the O'Brien. We have a lot of students from the exam schools because of the pressure.
I see.
I don't think living in the suburbs that you realize what kind of problems like this is really eye-opening for all of us, and for me and Asia, and I'm sure for our viewers, that there's so much that's going on. I'm not too sure, do you also have metal detectors, and because you said there's such a crime rate and stuff.
It's interesting about the metal detectors. I worked at, for 16 years of my career, Madison Park High School, which is in inner city Roxbury. It's a pretty rough neighborhood. Mm-hmm. We had the metal detector. The students would go through, but because of fire codes, all the doors need to be able to be pushed open from the inside. You can't lock the students in.
Okay.
So you have the metal detectors, but you have so many different means where a student will push a door open, let another student in, put something to hold the door, run around. So I think that the metal detectors make people feel a little safer, but I've always felt if somebody wanted to bring something in, they'll find a way. We would do sort of sweeps every so often. All the administrators would be there. And you'd see the kids coming, and then they'd realize, oh, today's the day they're checking everything, and you see someone try to head back. But school police would often go, realizing that there would be, something that they shouldn't have.
Is there a police officer?
We do have school police. They're Boston police, but they're school police officers. And they're much more of the typical friendly police officer. They're in the building, they're talking with the kids, they're helpful to the students. So it's not a real feel of like in a police state. And a lot of times the schools are still very safe. They keep the gang violence more in the streets, but there will be students who will come in and privately speak to an officer and say, look, I got myself into this situation in my neighborhood and I'm not sure. So it's really been, my experience has been very positive with the school police.
And that's what's so nice that you said that both, whether the rich neighborhoods or this, both sides have issues.
Exactly.
It's not just the poor poverty, it's also the wealthy. But it's working with the children that makes a huge difference, because basically they're children, basically young adults. But when you work with them, it's wonderful, because they're opening up to you. You said you had a positive experience. So, it only happens is when you don't have the support system. That's when the child can, do a crime or act out, or in the other case, get more depressed and have anxiety. I had no idea so many programs existed.
We really do have a lot of programs. My experience has been extremely positive over the years. I mean, there's the good, there's the bad. It's certainly not perfect, but I think it gets a bad name. Oh, those, people would say, are you afraid to go to work? And I've always said, when I'm afraid to go to work, I'll get a different job. And also, I'm not doing it, sometimes people praise me like I'm Mother Teresa, but I like what I do. I love to go in there.
I have known you for, I think now, 7 years. I had never known what you do to this extent. I would say that yes, it's a big job. It is like Mother Teresa, it's not so easy. I would never know you how I met, that you do this kind of job.
Well, when we met with our children at Milton Academy, I was working at Madison Park High School. We went in for the morning. They had the beautiful spread with the long stem strawberries and all the little pastries, and we were in the Strauss Library, like out of a movie,
yes,
with the old-fashioned, and the performances and speeches. And then midway through the day, that was over, and then I drove to inner city Boston and walked into my school. The graffiti, yelling, commotion, and it was almost too much. My brain was, because it's so close in miles.
Yes.
We're talking less than 5 miles from one to the other, and it was worlds apart. Yeah. And again, that's why I've been there so long, because I feel like there's such a need. And one of the things that the research really proves is the students who make it have one adult that they really are connected to, and that they feel, they've got their back, they can go to them. And we've seen it in the program that I'm running called the PATH program for students with depression and anxiety. We had a young lady in 9th grade at one of the exam schools where you have to test in. So she had good skills, academic skills, but emotionally was very, very rough year. She was hospitalized psychiatrically 4 times.
Amazing.
In and out, really a terrible year. All the students are on IEPs, the individualized educational plans, had a meeting and said she needs a higher level of support naturally. She came into our program, very quiet, a little hesitant, and then you saw her just bloom, just go, and a very bright student, and by then she was helping the other students. We had a board where we tried to keep track of assignments for the students. She would be the scribe. What do you have for math today? Let me write that for you. You have a paper due next week. We'll put that in.
Confident.
She really came out of her shell. That was 10th grade. 11th grade came. I took her and a couple of other young women to the Mass Women's Conference, and we had an amazing experience. If you're not aware of it, it's about 10,000 women at the convention center, with amazing speakers. They have a young women's program. You really try to get my background, I was president of Boston Now years ago, a lot of feminist organizations. I really want to bring the young women into that leadership. So I brought this young woman and another young woman from a similar school, similar issues. had an amazing time. We tried to go again this past year, and the funding was cut. So I said, no, I'm going to make this happen, because Hillary Clinton and
I was going to say the conference was Hillary Clinton, and that's the picture.
And Lupita Nyong'o were the keynote speakers. So I found out the funding was gone. I called the conference. I said, look, I have these inner city girls. They need to be there. They don't have the money. What are we doing here? So they said, well, we have a contest, but we also have scholarships, but there's a contest. So I asked this young woman, both of them, I said, make me a little video to say why you want to go back, and we'll enter this Share Your Story contest. This was the summertime. I'm waiting and waiting, texting, no one calls anymore. You have to text every teenager. Yeah, it's coming, it's coming. Finally, I said, what are you doing? Just send me the thing. So she confesses that she made this slideshow using software, and it cost money, and she didn't have the money to put in. So I said, look, I have a credit card, let's do it. We did it. I saw the slideshow and wept in my office, entered it into the contest, and the end of this long story is we won the grand prize.
And you got the funding.
We got the funding. We also got a VIP table. And then every day it felt like Christmas. They were coming back. They asked, would my two students introduce Lupita Nyong'o, Academy Award-winning actress? So they were up on the stage. We had a private meeting with Hillary Clinton. My joke is that my profile picture on LinkedIn, I'll be 90 with white hair. It will still be me and Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
So obviously it was amazing for me.
Yes.
But to take these two girls who had like a bleak forecast, and here they are thinking, I can do anything. Hillary wanted to meet me. She saw my video. So I feel like those are the things, the opportunities that within a setting that you can go in and bring to students. And they know that, I was on the phone with them over the summer, nighttime, picking them up, driving. They know that
there's a mentor,
that
there's a role model.
They have someone there. And both of them graduating. One is going to Baldwin Wallace in Ohio. She wants to be, since I've known her, she wants to be a neuroscientist since 9th grade. And then my other student will be going to Salem State College. So it's so rewarding to see that, we were able to go from point A to point B.
Congratulations.
That's such a nice, rewarding job, actually, because you can actually see the results.
It can be very stressful, but when you see the results is exactly why I do it.
But I have to say that you did approach Mass Conference, and that was Conference for Women, and they helped you out. They helped you out because you had a great program. You wanted something for them. You spearheaded, and it came out. So you have been always helping the women.
You have to ask. You absolutely have to ask. Everyone out there.
Yes.
Why not ask? I was at a play once with Esther Roll, the actress who's no longer with us, and it was Raisin in the Sun, and I was working with a middle school. And the way she was talking about the family and about doing the right thing, I thought, wow, my students need to hear this. This is so perfect. And my students were primarily African American. I asked my school, I said, do we have a graduation speaker yet? They said no. I said, it's okay if I contact Esther Roll? They laughed at me and said, whatever you like, go ahead. She came and spoke at our graduation. And the kids did not know the show Good Times. The parents knew the show, but there were parents crying. JJ's mother is here. They knew the character. And again, they felt like, wow, we must be very important, even though we're in a very high poverty, inner city, downtrodden area. But look who's come. And again, you just have to ask. So,
great advice. Great advice.
Yeah. Another group I want to talk about, because there's so many issues that go on. There's really been a lot of activity with lesbian, gay, trans, bisexual. There's so many letters now. When I was coming up, it was you were straight or gay. The students have such a sophisticated view of gender and their own identities. Right now we're using LGBTQA+.
Oh,
A is the asexual. There's also pansexual. There's so many varieties that these students, they educate me every day. I started a gay-straight alliance in my school, although we don't call it gay-straight, we call it gender sexuality alliance, because they felt that gay-straight ruled out a lot of people, which
it does.
agree.
Yes.
Yeah. So, or we call it Speak Out BCLA, which is BCLA is the name of the school. But there's students who are questioning their identity, their sexuality, and their gender. This is so different for me. I mean, I know we've probably seen it on TV, seen transgender, but to be within students who are just, and they're able to share that with you. I mean, when I was growing up, you would never speak of anything. And we have a group that we meet once a week, and they come in and they bring us issues, and they share videos with us, and it's been really amazing to be a support for these students. And as I said, they are teaching me.
It's interesting because this is another issue that needs attention, that needs focus and help. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, you know, again with the suicide depression, students who are in that particular group are 4 times more likely to take their own lives. So the rate of suicide among students of varying sexualities is really high, and it has been for years. I had a friend who the title of his book was "I Thought People Like That Killed Themselves."
Oh.
That was a term that he had heard. So again, the schools are providing a lot that the parents are not able to, or whoever they're living with. There's also a little more stigma, particularly in the African American community, around sexuality issues. So I think the students having the school as a safe place to come and, you know, talk with us and get assistance. But I'm also learning about pronouns. Some students don't like he or she. They want to be called they, which I'm grammatically a little trouble because I'm a grammatician. But, or ze is he or she. So many variations that I'm learning about.
Oh, it's completely new to me. It's all foreign. I'm sorry, you know, like it's a learning process, actually.
Yeah.
It really is.
So that was urban education. I have learned a lot. I have deep regards for Janet Ferrone for educating Soph and me and all of our audience. And the work she has been doing and Massachusetts has been supporting. It's amazing. I really wish that you will come back with other issues that you've been working on. Thank you once again, Janet. It was a pleasure. And thanks to you, I'm Isha.
And I'm Soph. We'll see you next time.
And the pleasure has been all mine.